right, here we are with Nils Rosenblad from Nash. He's going to take us through some of the Nash wings.
All right.
How's it going?
Good, good. Nice to be here. I haven't been here in 20 years.
Really?
Yeah.
It's tough to get them off Maui. No.
It is tough to leave Maui. We do our best to escape, but
Yes.
it keeps sucking us
Well,
back.
we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
So you have a couple of new wings this year?
I mean,
winging is the new thing, and you guys are leading the way.
I mean, winging is becoming the thing. You know, it's just, this seems to go in 20-year cycles. We had our 20 years of windsurfing, 20 years of kiting, and I think we're looking at 21st century winging is going to be it.
Right.
It's all about efficiency when you have 8 billion people.
That's right.
And this is...
and it's a little easier to get into than, say, kite surfing, right?
You know, I would say winging is the quickest way to get into a high-performance, wind-driven water sport.
Yep.
There is, and I think there's... The other thing that makes it really fun is there's no end in sight. Like, we're not even close to...
We're just scratching the surface.
We're scratching the surface. This is like, you know, dark ages technology compared to where we're going to be at in 3 years or 5 years. And
wow.
So that makes it fun for me. I mean, I'm designing all the foils now, and it's just really a fun place to be.
Cool.
But Nash offers, we make 3 wings.
Yep.
This is the Matador Lt. So the Matador and the Matador Lt this was our second generation wing where they really decided they wanted more power. They wanted something that could depower really nicely. They were looking at downwinders, but so it's got a more rigid leading edge. You can see there's larger diameter. It's just a more powered up canopy. It's got a little more camber. It's one of these things that statically will just drag you out of the water onto the wing, and then is nicely controllable. So like a 4.0 Matador has the same power as a 4.6 of our normal wing, which is already a fairly powerful wing.
Yeah.
But it's never becomes unmanageable or anything. The biggest differences between these two, we went to a new handle. We took out the windows to make this one a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
And then we went to a new handle shape, which handles have been an ongoing, endless development process.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of little things that go into making a great handle, and every time we think we have it perfect, we find something. But what you're really looking at in a handle is, first of all, it's the basic grab, which is, we keep going back and forth. There's the really precise guys want the 2 handles up here, but for 90% of the people in the water, you just want to grab a front handle and have a little bit of range for a front hand position.
Right.
If you really think about it, there's just one center of lift of a wing, so there's really one right position for this, and the only thing that changes that is your wingspan as a human. Yeah, this is super rigid. That's yeah. We pump them to 700 pounds for the trade. No, we can't do that because they would explode.
Right.
But then the second.
What is it, about 12 pounds?
No, this is regular 9.
Oh, right.
8.5 or 9,
so
unless
big,
somebody got super enthusiastic. Well, yeah. So the load on the skin is proportional to the pressure and the diameter.
Okay.
So this, if you go out to the wingtip, the same pressure, it's much more squishy.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Right.
So this is why everything. It doesn't matter if
I've never had a kite with a.
I was going to say it doesn't matter if it's a kite.
It's all foreign to me.
It doesn't matter if it's a kite or a wing or whatever. If it's going to explode, it's going to explode here because that's where everything, all the load is. Well, the main thing is that the pressure and the diameter, the stress on the material is the highest.
Right.
So that's we do a lot of engineering to make sure that you can have a diameter like this and it won't Hindenburg on you.
Right.
But really briefly going back to handles, we were always looking at, we look at stiffness this way, because when you're actually flying the wing, you get a little bit of yaw control. So you can input with a little bit, if you go to a super rigid handle, that has pros and cons, but we really were we want it simple and soft.
Yeah.
But if you got a little bit more yaw control with a stiffer handle, and then it's a question of getting the geometry of the actual handle to really fit.
Okay. You're around your grip.
Where you can just kind of easily.
Square, right?
Yeah, it's actually sort of a half round on the inside, and then this side is square just to get the stiffness.
Right.
Well, this one actually feels pretty square. But generally, this fits a wide range of hands, and it's just you're out there, you're just kind of hanging on, and you want to be able to sort of hook your fingers and kind of like a small diameter windsurfing boom. Cool. So we played around a lot with that, and this is our latest and greatest, and we think we've got it as right as we've ever been.
Amazing.
And then the Matador is the same wing, just has windows. It has a previous generation of handles because this is the latest and greatest, but
so right now, just the 2 models of wing, is that it?
We have these two, and then we also have the standard Wingsurfer.
Right. So this is the two models of Matador.
Yeah.
Right.
And the Matador, you ride it like half to a meter smaller than you'd ride this one.
The Wingsurfer.
And then this is the third generation of the original Nash wing that we launched. I don't even know how many years ago now.
3 or 4. Whatever.
3 or 4. Yeah. It was one of those things where
pre-pandemic.
It was happening, and Robbie's like, and then all of a sudden one day, he's like, make one of these things.
Right.
And we knocked one out, and he immediately just, Robbie's very binary. He's very black and white, as I'm sure you saw in the meeting today. But he went from, oh, I don't know about this winging crap, to this is it. This is where it's going, and we need to be on this. And we, as a brand, he really committed, and that's what we've been doing. But this is the third generation of this, so this has just been refined in every way. It's a more rigid leading edge. It's not as rigid as that one, but it's a nice solid frame when you're winging. It has very easy power on and power off. It just accelerates smoothly. It handles nicely.
Yeah.
It's it's Nash. So we're really we have a really long relationship with our manufacturing partner. They actually started their factory specifically to build Nash sails because he was a Robbie Nash guy going back to Robbie's days as a windsurfer with Gastra. So we're always looking at just the absolute top level QC and what materials we use and how we engineer and design things. But this is our all around go-to wing. It goes down to the small sizes. I think we actually have the 2.2 in production now.
Yeah.
Which everybody's saying 2.2, what are you going to do with that? And the truth is, in 20 knots, a not super heavy good rider is going to be, they're going to go small.
Wow.
Like on Maui, where it's always windy, people are riding stupidly small wings. And you look at them like, oh, I can't do that, but they can do it, and they're good at it. So it's efficiencies. It's all about it being efficient.
Well, it's an amazing line. Thanks for taking us through.
Thank you so much.
Let's take a look at some of the foils that you designed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Foils have been fun because I've been going back and forth between Nash and an America's Cup campaign for the last 3 years. So every time I had some dumb idea for foils, I could run it by the absolute best guys on the planet, it's a good feedback loop. It keeps you honest, let's put it that way.
All right.
Do we want to talk about the board range, or
Sure. Yeah,
or do you do foils first and then maybe boards, or whatever?
Whatever's easiest.
Let's do foils since we're already kind of talking about foils.
Got a little bit better. But yeah, no, we're
Let's see. I think this is basically the foil setup that we're looking at this year.
So these are the wing foils.
These are
square.
medium aspect foils
For wing or surf or.
Yeah. So we basically, we make a surf foil range, the jet range, and that's really been developed with the primary focus on surfing more than anything else.
Right.
And we make dedicated kite foils, we make dedicated windsurf foils. But then when pumping came along and all of that, then we started looking at high aspect. I think we made our first high aspect prototypes in around, oh man, I want to say 4 years ago. And at the time, everybody's like, well, great, but it's too high aspect. But once people realized, oh, you can just pump around and do laps and stuff, that became a thing. So the next phase of development was we introduced a whole range of HA foils. And these turned out to be also a super winging foil because they have really long glide. If you're in lighter conditions, they pump great. They have great glide ratios. They're relatively low drag. But the one aspect with a higher aspect foil, and it doesn't matter whose it is, and there's one exception to this, which I'll talk about, but in general, if you think about turning and maneuvering and what people are really starting to do on wings, which is, they're riding swells, they're doing all this stuff, anytime you do a turn, this outside wingtip has to accelerate. And with that acceleration, you're getting, the speed here is literally whatever this speed is, then plus your turn rate. It increases here, it decreases there, and both of those things,
Swing around.
they restrict your ability to turn, and then you look at winging and you're like, you're powered, like you have a power source. So glide doesn't become as critical. So maybe the glide ratio isn't the priority. So we went into hacksaw world, which is how real R&D is done, and we started playing with modifying the wingtips of high aspect foils. And what we ended up with was developing these medium aspect foils, which have the same basic DNA as this, but the wingtips have been removed, which is kind of like what you see on a stunt plane. So it means they're carrying full camber out to the wingtip. It comes with a small cost in drag because you're not resolving the wingtip vortices as well as you would with this, but you get a huge gain in maneuverability and basic control. Like the foil never takes charge, so you're getting the same takeoffs, very close to the same top speed, probably faster downwind because you have so much more control. But it's something that's much more maneuverable, but it's maneuverable in a very solid way. So there's a very solid feedback loop, like a stunt plane.
Interesting.
You know, so if you look at stunt plane wings, they're not that dissimilar.
So how do I decide whether I want to go with super long HA versus?
You know, it depends on your skill level, what you're trying to do, and the conditions
more skilled,
set.
you're going to go MA maybe?
I actually think this is easier to use.
Really? Okay.
You can use a smaller wing, right? You can use a 12. This 1200 has pretty much the same lift as our 1400 HA.
Yeah.
It's not going to glide or pump as well, but you're going to have more control all the time. So you're dealing with something that's smaller, and particularly when you turn downwind, these can make you.
Right.
They're going to make you work. But
so these are better for pumping.
Yeah, and if you're at the bottom of the range where you're doing some sort of a hybrid between winging and pumping and gliding and being powered up, then you would want to go with the HA. And the HAs, in a straight line, they're going to be faster.
And then the jet.
That's a massive jet.
Massive jet.
That basically you could probably take off.
So this is a beginner.
And a surf
Robbie
wing.
was saying that.
Everybody starts. A lot of people who start winging, they just start on this. It's super stable. You can see it has a tail volume is a function of the area of the tail wing and the length of the fuselage.
Much bigger tail wing.
It has a high tail volume, which makes it very pitch stable. So once you're up, it just kind of trims itself out. It's not going to be super fast, but you're just going to get you flying, gliding, and then you can just, you get your game together. You're not waiting for the axe to fall.
Amazing. And you have a couple different constructions and sizes of mast, obviously.
Yeah, we have.
And they're all compatible with all of.
Yeah, our whole system from the very beginning, we decided to go with a modular system.
Yep.
And that was we just decided you have to be able to change things. And then as wingspans increased, the load on the front wing connection became more and more critical. But if you look at one of these wings, early on, I was dealing with some other issues.
Is that new?
No, we've had this.
For a while,
so this was just something that was just pure luck. Early on, I was concerned that we weren't going to get the exact angle correct on the fits that we were getting with this flat surface. So I put this is basically an indexing, but that indexing, we have a scarf joint, which all the lifting loads, but this index holds all the torsional loads, and it's incredibly strong. And the fact that we later went to higher aspect has made this seem like a genius move, but really at the time it was solving a completely different problem that worked out. But it's enabled us to stay modular throughout. So you can take any new wing and put it to your present Nash system. You can
really
upgrade.
Nice connection point.
You can upgrade the mast. Yeah, the connection point has been an ongoing development, and we're going to finally we're working on a new system to do something a little different there, but everything now is completely backwards compatible, and we're always going to continue to make the latest parts that fit with the old stuff. The carbon mast, we have two different. I forget what the carbon content. I think one of them
30.
is 30 is one, and
100.
I think the second one is actually it's 90 or 100. It's
Yeah.
probably 100. And what you really gain, there is
aluminium, as Ewan would say.
aluminum, unless we're in England. I know all the people in Hong Kong are like aluminium, and you're like, you can get rid of the extra syllable. Imagine your entire life you say an extra syllable every time you say the word aluminum.
I don't know.
Where are you going to end up?
I can't even say aluminium.
Aluminum.
I know.
Just say it. Don't worry about it. Laugh at it. But you're going to get lighter weight. You're going to get more torsional rigidity with the higher carbon content, and you're going to get more bending stiffness.
So is this the first year with the 30% and the 100
Yes.
on this?
Yes.
Amazing.
And we did the 30% because we thought it's nice to have a price point. And there is an argument to say that the 30% is kind of like having a car with a little bit squishy suspension, where it does kind of absorb some things that, you know, once you go to a more rigid carbon structure.
Right.
But having said that, the aluminum mass that we have is also very, very rigid. It's super stiff in bending, very stiff in torsion.
Might be even probably stiffer than the 30% carbon one, or
Yeah, I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, but I'm guessing it might be.
yeah.
I mean, to me, I'm always looking at stiffness, but the advantage of the carbon one is it's smaller.
Right.
So, you know, if you think of the mass, the submerged part of the mass, the fuselage, all those things, those are basically just parasitic drag. They're not producing meaningful lift that you're using. The less of them you have, the faster and more slippery the whole package is going to be through the water. So for sure, even the 30% carbon mass is faster than the aluminum one.
Amazing.
And that's what we love about composites.
They definitely look so durable and stiff and slick, the whole setup.
Yeah, it's everything is, you're trying to hit that compromise between getting this perfect clean shape and having something that's bomb proof and having something that people can take it apart and put it back together hundreds and hundreds of times in the back of the car. It's in a, you know, not the greatest environment for corrosion.
Right.
So we really are, it's always a balancing act. You're always trading everything off. But I think we've hit a really good spot for, you know, this is like upper level gear. We're not claiming any of this stuff is going to be win the kite racing world championships, but that's a tiny component. For most people, they want to go fast, they want stuff that really works. They love the plug and play.
Yes.
People like being able, you know, we're at the beach.
Having all the options of all these different wings is,
you can kind of get,
if you want to kite, if you want to.
And it's amazing how much overlap we have, because there's always this feedback loop. Like the kite, we'll work on developing something with the kite wings,
right?
And then that'll turn into, oh well, what if we apply that? Like this was a foil that started out, I made some kite foil prototypes, and then we went a little further in a slightly different direction with the kite foils.
Yep.
But then Robbie wanted a high performance windsurfing foil, and I'd just been working on all this super exotic stuff on the boats, and I came back with this one, and we did a bunch of prototypes and some pretty hairball sections, but this one turned out to be the best one. But now the wing guys are really loving it. And then the kite guys now are revisiting in light air. And this is a unique one in that even though it's a very wide span, which means it has a really long glide ratio, it has a very thin washed out wingtip, which is something that you'll see on the boats. Like if you look at the Imeca 60s and everything, it's a pretty standard approach to doing that. And that means that this still turns amazingly well. So it's really, really fast, and yet
still pumps.
And the trade-off is that when you make a wingtip like that, you know, you're making something it's a little more pushing into the envelope of it's a sharp wingtip.
Yeah.
And one thing I really love about how these came out is that's like probably the safest foil out there.
That's true.
And the performance is amazing.
Blunting object versus a spearing object.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to lose a kidney.
Yeah.
But the performance is the fact that, you know, this started out just as an experiment, and we hit all these performance targets, and then you end up with something that's actually really nice and safe for people that are.
Yeah.
And it does it all. I mean, my wife, who's gotten really, really good, was just completely hooked on the 1250 surf wing.
Yep.
And finally got her on one of these, and she hates everything. She loves this. She's like, I can't believe this is finally like her wing. Like, cool. It's everything that she was getting out of the other ones, and then some. So, yeah, we're really pleased with that. I think for winging, this is, you know, if you look at that middle 70 to 80% of wingers, this is that, you know, once you got even a little bit of game to really pretty high level, this is going to be a really nice all-around package, and they surf nicely.
Cool. Well, it's a good thing we don't cover windsurfing, because we'd be at the Nash booth for the next.
Oh yeah, I definitely talk too much.
No, not you.
It's good to get.
No, I mean we went through. You guys have so much.
Oh my God,
stuff.
we have so much shit. It's insane.
Let's maybe take a quick
I like
look
how
at
Robbie was
some of the
saying, what's the next best big thing? And he's like, I hope nothing, because we already have too much stuff.
Well, you know, you got to say in beach toy world, FOMO is what's leading the charge. People are so afraid of missing the next big thing.
I know,
and yet at the same time, they're really emotionally attached. Like I never became a kiter. I was a windsurfer, and I just completely skipped kiting, but now I'm winging.
Well.
And I have Schadenfreude because I'm watching winging cannibalizing kiting, just like I watch kiting cannibalizing windsurfing, which is what originally moved me to Maui. So I'm kind of like, whatever. One hand watches the other. I think if we're on the water, it's all good.
Exactly.
The Nash board range is, it's just one of those, it's a range where they basically started making a few boards and they got into it, and somehow, really with the range before this, they just started, everything just started falling into place. Like this is pretty much like, if you go to the beach in Maui, you see more Nash boards than any other brand. And it's because they're all just kind of do everything well. They take off nicely, they're pretty stable platforms for getting going, they're low drag in the air, they got the ergonomics right on the deck. Everything has just been sorted out, and they're just.
And Charlie was saying that that a lot of people really like the kind of price to construction performance and lightweight ratio of everything.
They're light.
Like,
they're light enough. You could make them lighter and double the cost.
right.
But they had to survive. They got to be light. They got to be tough. And you're not stomping a wingboard the way you stomp a windsurfer. But they're starting. Once you put foot straps on it, people are starting to stomp them. So we have the.
Right.
The sandwich decks and everything.
Yeah. What's the one that people really should look at starting with, I guess?
It's funny. I really was feeling like the 105, but talking to Charlie, he says people are going bigger. But to me, your board is a platform. Everybody thinks it's a board. You got to stop thinking like it's a board. It's a takeoff. It's a launch vehicle. That means you need to be able to get on your board, get to a position that you think you can get to your feet, balance on that thing with the wing in the air, and stand up. And once you're standing up, the only thing you get out of having a bigger board at that point is if it's longer, you'll have a slightly higher glide speed, so the takeoff will be slightly smoother. So the bigger your board, but the actual takeoff speed is the same because it's the foil that's taken off, right? And the other thing is a bigger board does have more surface, so it's a little more sticky. So even though you can glide up to a faster speed, there's that release, we call it stiction, where the entire bottom panel of the board unsticks from the water and it goes like that, and that's that lunge into the air that you feel. And when you go to a smaller board, that lunge is a little bit less. So I tend to go small, but I do know that a lot of people like for starting out and stuff, they like the 115.
So which is the 115? This here?
You have to read it. That's the 125.
Oh, so this is the one.
Yeah,
it's reasonably.
but and if you're a big guy, if you're a big guy, you need to balance on it and hold the damn wing. And you have that. I don't know how long it is from the time that you clamber onto the board, but you have a certain amount of time before you're going to inevitably fall off, and that amount of time the window is increased with a bigger board. So for a bigger guy, for sure.
So would the volume for the wingboards be similar to like a windsurfing board? Like if you rode at a spot on a 120 liter windsurfer most of the time, would you go
I think you can go smaller on a wingboard. And the reason is you're only using the board to launch. So if you can stand on it, and don't forget, if you get onto your knees on a board, right, and then you hold the wing, you start going and you get to your feet. Well, as soon as you're going like 1.5 or 2 knots, that mast is giving you lots of roll stability because it's like a giant keel. And the foil is actually down there kind of holding everything too. It's like a T section, right? Yeah. So you can go smaller than you would typically for a windsurfing board. And the development curve is very fast. So, if you buy a 115, you're going to want a 95 in 2 months. But if you just go and suffer for the first 2 weeks with a slightly, go down a size or two.
I'm amazed that this is actually even 115. It seems so
it
short.
Is.
Right? I mean, see, I just visually when I used to look at a 115 liter windsurfing board, obviously they're longer.
Well,
narrower.
These are
wide.
It is actually. You're right. It is.
What's that?
It's got a lot. With that really square deck, there's a lot of volume packed into the.
It's to the nose. It's compact.
But that's one thing about the computer programs now. We know the volumes.
It's not a marketed volume.
In the old days, board volume was literally they would put them in. Well, I don't know if everybody did this, but I know that JP did this. They'd put them in a tank and sink them and measure the change of the level, and then they'd slightly adjust the shape to hit the volume target.
Right.
Or a lot of times they would just put numbers on that weren't even true.
Right.
Which we can do, but nowadays everything is done in 3D shape programs. So
let's go through a couple of beginner scenarios. Let's say we've got a rider who lives on the Great Lakes, weighs 170 pounds, and just getting into wing foiling. What size? They're going to ride in 15 to 20 knots, and they're 170 pounds, flat water. What size board, wing, and foil should they buy for their first setup?
I would go. At that weight, man, I think if they have any kind of basic physical skill set, I would be 105 at the very biggest 115. I mean, I'm 175, but we have a little more wind on Maui, so the more wind you have, and the more powered up. If you're comfortable holding the wing, you know, and you have a sense of wind or whatever, the more powered up you are, the less board you can get away with. To a little bit, it's like 1 or 2 board sizes, but 105 to 115, and you know, in 15 to 20 knots, you can go right to a 4.6, 4.0 Matador, 4.6 Wingsurfer, or 5.0 Matador, right in that range.
And what size foil underneath should they match it up with?
I would say 1650 jet, just because it's an all-around forgiving foil, and it's a surf foil. It's big, but it lifts really nicely. But then once you're up, it just kind of goes to its speed and kind of parks there. So you just don't have this feeling like you're on ice with everything going out from under you, and you can just really get a nice controlled glide very easily.
So what if you were like a fairly well-versed kite foiler, and you were getting into
that same guy, a well-versed kite foiler, I put him on a 95. I'd put him on a MA 1200, and I'd keep him on the same size wing, because the kite guys are used to power, but they already know how to finesse the board.
Right.
Like if you're an experienced foiler, you're going to wing instantly.
Right. So
Like I was when I started winging, I'd done a little bit of windsurf foiling, but basically all the foiling I did was connected with boats.
Right.
So I didn't have the standing on a board foiling skill set.
Right.
And it was a struggle, you know. And I'm a sailor, wing surfer, whatever.
Yeah.
But anybody who's got that basic foiling skill set, it makes winging.
To the next,
winging. You're talking. They're going to be winging decently in 3 days.
Okay,
So
next guy,
3 weeks.
200 pounds. Not talking about me.
Right? Does he have a beer in one hand?
Beer in one hand, maybe. And an okay kite foiler. Buying my first setup, riding in 15 knots of wind.
I'd go big wing again, kiter, because they want power. So for that guy, I'd go. I think a 5 Matador, definitely a Matador. They just got that grunty power, and you know, if you're big, you just want to get out of the water, right? Like, and then I would go 115, and I would probably use that same foil. You could go up to the next, like an 1800. I would go to the next size up, whatever the next jet is above the. I don't even remember the numbers because I'm a designer, not a number guy.
To go one size down, how much do I need to lose?
You don't need to lose anything. Your skill level is going to go, and when your skill level comes up, you're going to go from that, whatever jet foil you started, straight to probably the 1400 HA or the bigger one of the bigger MAs. And your skill level will still come really fast. I mean, the heavy guys, they definitely struggle because everything is penalized with weight, right? The wing is more loaded, the foil has to do more work, the board is sinking, everything's stickier. But at the same time, once you're up, you're potentially a ball of fury because you have more weight to control this stuff. So, you know, it's not like you're going to get bucked off. Like you get a 115-pound person and they're going to pop up on the foil, and then the foil is going to try to take off like a scalded cat, and you know. Whereas this guy, once he gets up, he's going to have this actually kind of neutral cruisy zone where you can control everything pretty easily because of that weight. So that's the trade-off. But the first part is getting unstuck from the water.
Okay. How about for a 14-year-old girl named Kira? It's about 100 pounds and hasn't ever foiled but surfs.
I would get her. Well, my son is he was a top-level competitive surfer. Like he got 3rd in nationals in Huntington one year and stuff, and he doesn't foil because he's a surfer.
Yeah.
But I think he will. But right now he doesn't. But we put him on a surf foil, which is pretty hard, and he paddled in and did about 6, got on the foil, did about 6 turns. I think he fell off once, and he did about 6 turns on his 2nd wave. I think his 4th wave he paddled back out, and then on about his 6th wave we're like, give me that foil back, punk.
So if he was
I'm gonna say a surfer, she can just go right to. I'd have a small wing, I'd have a pretty small board because she weighs nothing, but something that she's gonna want. You know, she's gonna have to learn the wind part.
Yeah.
So you can learn a lot of that on the beach. You can literally stand on the beach and learn how to sail and you can learn how to get up off the ground, right? And then she's gonna get up, and then the foil at that weight, she goes so small. 1050, I would say 1050 jet, or the smallest MA.
And what size wing?
Ooh, I would use the classic Wingsurfer, just a little gentler and more forgiving, and I would be like, depending on how windy it was, 3.6 or 2.8. I mean, my wife weighs, I'm not allowed to talk about her weight, but she's lighter than she'll admit. She's pretty good, but she uses a 2.8 all the time. That's her go-to. If it's really light, she'll take a 3.6. That right there, that is literally, and
Amazing.
yeah, small. And you know, the other thing about women compared to men is men balance, we carry our weight here, women are much more from their core. So, I mean, girls are getting really good at this sport really fast because they finesse it. And it is core, you're driving the foil from your core. Like guys, we all have to learn, you're not like, you know, it's a finesse, it's nuanced. So I expect, yeah, you just start with small equipment, it's gonna take her a little time to get going. Once she pops up, she'll be gone. Great.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for taking us through all that.
Yeah.
And yeah, look forward to get out on the water soon.
Oh, me too. I know I got to go back to the hotel and get my wetsuit because I think I'm too much of a wuss.
Looks like the wind kind of died.
Freezing cold water.